Today we have with us somebody that we've had before, and I felt it was important to ask Dr. Linda Marks to come back with us, only because with the schools opening and with I guess the confusion, Dade County schools are opening October 15th, Aventura schools are opening the 29th, private schools are a different date, some are virtual, some are hybrids. It's so convoluted that I felt who better to ask than a superintendent of schools, a teacher. Let me just tell you a little about Dr. Marks. She's got her education background for over 30 years as a teacher, principal, superintendent of schools in the suburb of North Chicago. She's been head of schools at Hochberg Prep, commissioner of the city of Aventura, and she has been very diligent in ensuring that when we built the new high school, it was built to proper standards, the quality controls, and the educational and procedures were in place with the right classes, the right such. The next thing, she's also nationally recognized by NSBA, which is the National School Board of Association for Leadership in Technology. She's a founding member of the First in the World Consortium and received national recognition for leadership in math and science instruction. So obviously, not only is she a phenomenal asset to the city of Aventura as one of our commissioners, but more importantly, as a student teacher, because she has made sure that as we opened ACES and as we have opened the high school, it's been done properly. And when I say opened virtually initially. So rather than go on and on about you, because I can continue, because Dr. Marks and I not only have worked together carefully and closely on the commission, but we worked together with Hochberg Prep. I was on the board of directors of the school, and Dr. Marks was brought in by our board to take over the head of schools, where we had over 400 children from all ages all the way up. So I thank you, and I thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure.
I mean, with what's going on now, it must be amazing for you to be thinking about how things have changed from when you were teaching, when you were an educator, and look what's going on now. Who would have ever dreamt this would be in our resume, if at all? So I guess the best thing to start with is they start out doing virtual. How do you change and transition from virtual to live, going into a classroom? And what type of learning do they get, and what are the pros and cons of this type of learning?
That's a great question, Bob. So, first of all, teachers are used to teaching in person, and so they have developed styles that allow them to see the children, watch their body language, watch their interaction, and they're able from that point to adjust their teaching moment by moment.
Mm-hmm.
And now all of a sudden they're teaching virtually and don't have that same ability because it's much more difficult to do that on a screen. And so teachers are, first of all, needing to learn a level of technology that many of them don't have, and where they need really several years to be in-serviced in how to do it properly. They have just been told, they were in the spring, this is what you're going to be doing. And kudos to all of the teachers everywhere in the country for what they did, because they just stepped up to the plate and did their very, very best to help children. However, as you know from movies that are made, they aren't made in a minute, and there are retakes in movies. And the other issue that happens all the time is that experience really makes a difference in how good a movie can be, or how good an actor or actress can be, and therefore how good can learning be. So it was a challenge back in the spring for the children. It was a challenge for the teachers. It was a challenge for the administrators, and it was a challenge for our parents, who all of a sudden needed to be at home with their children, where they may have needed to work, or they had other obligations out of the home. And now all of a sudden the parents are becoming the teachers with absolutely no background,
Mm-hmm.
And no preparation, and not even 5 minutes to prepare. And so you had this gigantic dynamic that occurred in the spring. Now, from that point, of course, schools learned things that they needed to do differently. Schools got input from parents and from children about what worked and what didn't work. And that led to a shift for the beginning of this school year. And hopefully everybody felt a little more comfortable going back virtually, just because they knew it was likely going to happen. But still, it's a work in progress. It's not a completed program at this point. So you have this constantly evolving program. You have children who are sitting in front of a screen all day long. And believe me when I tell you, children can sit in front of Fortnite all day long and not move. They can sit there all day and play Fortnite. But it's not the same when they need to do their learning, because there's much more effort, to be able to really process all the different subjects and everything. So it was a challenge for every single factor of the population to really get through this. So now we're starting in person, and of course that comes with additional challenges and different challenges.
Now, when they come in person, obviously there are special protocols that have to be put in place for safety reasons for the kids. But let's suppose some of the kids or the parents don't feel comfortable sending their kids. Is there a hybrid version that we are allowing?
So across the country, this has been the problem that people have been dealing with. And first and foremost, it is critical for parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, everyone who is involved in these decisions to really analyze all of the pros and cons of sending a child back and not sending a child back. Some children did beautifully with virtual learning. Mm-hmm. They actually enjoyed being in front of their computer screen. Yeah. They learned well, and they felt that they had some academic freedom in that process to really be doing things a little bit more independently. Other children really did not process that type of learning well. So the first decision that anybody needs to make when they're offered these options is, number one, what is the amount of safety my child will have in school if I send my child to school? I think most of the adults would like their children to be in school, but there are children with compromised immune systems. There are children who really can't afford to get sick for a variety of reasons, or can't afford to bring home an illness because there are people in the home who are compromised. So decision number one is, what are the implications from a health perspective about sending my child back to school at all? Mm-hmm. And if a parent feels that after they analyze that they can send the child back to school, hybrid or full-time, then they can proceed to the next level. And the next level is, okay, where did my child learn best? Was my child one of those who really did do better at home? Mm-hmm. You have the opportunity right now to allow your child to be home. That doesn't always occur. So that's the next question that the decision makers need to make. And of course, as the kids are a little older, you make that decision with the kids.
Of course.
And then the other model that is then offered, depending on where in the country or where in the state your children are going to school, is some models are you go to school a few days and then you're home on, you're doing it by video. So the issue with that is, how comfortable are children going to be shifting constantly? Monday and Wednesday I'm going to go to school, I'm going to see my teacher. Tuesday and Thursday now I have to go back to Zoom. Friday, maybe 1 week I'm in school, 1 week I'm not in school. So how well can the children adapt to two models of learning in the same environment? So that's a big question, and that's one we don't have an answer to yet, because we're just looking at that option throughout the country. And then you have your third option, children just go back to school. Mm-hmm. That model has worked well when school districts have the ability to put in place the kinds of support that they need, whether it's additional staff, whether it is additional rooms so you spread out and have fewer children. And there are lots of considerations. And then we have to really look into the next part of this, which is our teachers. There are teachers who are facing the same issues that children are facing. Might they have a compromised immune system where it isn't safe for them to come back? Mm-hmm. Might they have people at home where even if they're fine going to school, they may bring something back to the home? So the same questions that we are asking about our children, our teachers are asking themselves in terms of their ability to really be able to get back into school. Now, throughout the country, what we're seeing is a number of teachers who can't come back for a variety of the reasons we just discussed. And in that situation, then each school district or area or private school really needs to make a determination. Will they allow the teacher to continue Zoom classes or online classes while the children are physically back in school.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because I think we made the decision that if a teacher can't come back, they can teach from home, but they would be a teacher's aide in the classroom where the kids are. And how does that work? Because there is, like you said, when you started, you talked about the need for the teacher. I mean, the teachers have an attitude, they have a certain style of teaching. Now the kids are in that class, and the teacher is at home teaching. How does that work?
Right. So that's one level away from just virtual learning.
Yeah.
Because now you have an adult in the class, and you hope that that adult is going to be watching the interaction of the children in the room, and you hope that that adult is going to be watching the teacher who's teaching, so that the adult can then walk around and at least assist the children. If they raise their hand or whatever, if the teacher doesn't see the hand, or if the teacher is doing something else, the other adult can at least give that immediate attention to a question, to something that a child may or may not understand. And so that's the purpose throughout the country, really, of putting that extra person in the room when the teacher is still on the screen.
Okay, that's what they're talking about. All right, I have a question because with kids being home, and they're home 90% of the time, they're with their parents, not with a teacher now, but they're learning from the virtual. How involved should a parent be with the educational side of, call it the babysitting time? Because I can't imagine that parents are equipped to teach, and yet they're being put in positions to almost become that teacher's aide and help with the teaching in subjects they may not even understand anymore.
Correct.
So how does that play a role in the education with the relationship of the parents and the students?
So first of all, and it's kind of fun to talk to teachers because kids are doing math and science at levels, even at younger ages, that the parents really don't even remember, or if they do remember, that wasn't their best subject, and so they're not comfortable. You know, you have language issues where English is a second language, and the parent is trying to help the child, but isn't quite sure exactly what the teacher was saying. There are a multitude of different issues, you know, that come up with that. So the parents who are equipped to honestly help the child through these classes and who can answer the questions, of course, that's, you know, a wonderful blessing.
Yeah.
But that's probably not the norm. There are socioeconomic issues that are also
They have to work.
associated with this. They
Yeah.
have to work.
Sure.
And also there are situations where you have a group of parents who may get together and say, wow, this is an advanced math class that we just don't know anything about. Let's get together and hire a tutor. And so you have 4 or 5
Which
groups of
is really
parents.
preference if they could.
And they bring in a tutor to help the children either as needed or even every day. But that creates haves and have-nots because not everyone can pay for a tutor. And not everyone 8 months ago who could have paid for a tutor can now pay for a tutor because the economy and the pandemic have affected not only teaching and learning, but certainly pocketbooks as well.
So let me ask you, you know, a thought just came to mind about, let's take a child who may have some special learning needs, and he's on virtual, he's doing these Zoom classes, but he isn't getting it. Is there an ability for them to talk to the teachers separately on a one-on-one to get special needs help?
So the government protects children
Right.
who have special needs, and it's the responsibility of every school in every district to ensure that the children are allowed the accommodations that they are absolutely entitled to. So for parents out there who may have children with those types of special needs and their children are not getting the support or didn't get the support up until now, the first thing I would recommend any parent, when you have something that's identified and you have, you know, this in writing and you've worked with your school, etc., is pick up the phone and call your school and say, I need those services now because my child has a right to them and my child needs them to really do what is expected of him.
You know, I remember back at when we had the school, and you know, when you have 450 kids, not everybody's at the same level. But I remember you were very integral in setting up a program because one of the biggest issues I feel, parents hate to acknowledge a deficiency in a child. You know, it's their children. They feel, how do you say something wrong about that child? And then we had situations where kids weren't performing, but the parents refused to acknowledge that they needed help. Is there an open phone line? Is there someone the parents can talk to discuss? Because it's hard for a parent to recognize a special needs because there's that nurturing side of the parent. So, I mean, what is the situation? What do they do?
So that is an enormous issue, again, around the country. Certainly not specific to any one area, but around the country. And let's start with the very basic thing. A child comes to school and maybe is not performing well. And maybe a teacher begins to feel that there is something more than just maybe not understanding a subject, but there may be something else prohibiting a child from learning. When, depending upon how a teacher reaches out to a parent and what is said and what type of support you have within your particular school or school district, that may be a very successful conversation or it may be a very unsuccessful
Yes,
conversation.
yeah, I can imagine.
And one of the things that parents all must know, it's not a deficiency. No one is the same. No one. So even a person with 160 IQ, top of the chart, so to speak, still has something within them that is prohibiting some part of their ability to perform on a daily basis, whether it's in school, whether it's socially, where they can't get along with one another. We all have a deficiency. So one shouldn't look at it as a deficiency, but rather some area that needs fixing, all right? And I have talked to parents numerous times about this. It's very challenging for a parent to hear this. And what a parent needs to understand is, when your child has a sore throat, you take your child to the pediatrician. And the pediatrician does what he needs or she needs to do, and the child eventually is able to overcome the sore throat or the strep throat and move on with life.
Yes.
This is no different, because the teachers who work within that particular community of children who have needs know exactly how to work with the child to develop those needs. There's no child who walks down the aisle to marry his wife, or the woman to marry her husband, or partners, or any other types of marriage that may go on, who has a sign that says, I have special needs.
Yeah.
What you do during the years of learning is learn to overcome and modify them. And so the thing that parents have to learn, most importantly, the sooner you address it,
Correct.
the
And that's the
sooner that
point,
child
yes.
overcomes that particular item that may be prohibiting them from learning.
All right, so here's a question for you. You're a teacher, you're an educator, you're a superintendent, you're a commissioner now, and we make decisions based on what we feel are the best for the children, obviously. And we have our schools opening up on the 29th of this month, and Dade County's opening up on the 15th. And the teachers, some feel comfortable, some don't feel comfortable, but these are decisions that have been made. If you were a teacher today, if you were the principal of that school today, what would you be doing? Do you feel comfortable with the schools opening now?
So I would have to say that depends on the district and the location and the city and a million other things. If proper protocols have been put in place, and if cleaning is taking place, and if masks are available, and if children are wearing masks, and if there's a separation if needed for someone who really needs to, not be right in the general public, but close by, if the proper items have put in place to permit as much as possible of a safe health environment, then you go back.
So, as commissioners of a city, we sit on the board of directors of our school. Have we done what you consider enough where when those children come back into school live, they'll be safe?
So, again, the city of Aventura has 2 schools, and they're small, and there is the ability to do what you need to do. So in the city of Aventura, we believe that that is in fact
Good.
true.
Okay.
But again, we're talking globally here, and because we have people who will be watching this who have children going to school everywhere.
Yes.
Everywhere. So again, the key for the adult decision makers who are making decisions about whether the child should go back to school or not, they need to really make sure that protocols are put in place, really, to keep the children as safe as possible and to keep the areas as
Yeah.
germ-free as we possibly can.
Great. We have the high school and we have the freshmen coming in now that were the little babies before, now all of a sudden the big shots. What's the transition like under times like this? Because our freshman high school, our sophomore high school, this is the first time in the building. In some cases, they've been teaching at home, they're learning at home. Before that, they were in ACES, let's say, and now all of a sudden they go live in a high school environment.
There are two ends of the continuum, and both have issues. Our incoming freshmen had virtual learning for about a third of the year.
Absolutely, yes.
They did not have the benefit of the depth of learning in many cases that children would have had they been in school in person, again, throughout the country. This is a global issue. So the high school teachers now who are going to be teaching the freshman class also need to be ready to honestly consider making sure that a little bit of assessment is done. Where are the children? Are they at the level that you expected from the last 8, 10, 20 years when you taught? Or are there areas where, oops, I have to take a minute or a week and I have to go back, make sure the children have these baselines because otherwise they can't learn.
Yeah.
Now we're going to fast forward to the seniors. So last year's graduating senior class had a really challenging time, maybe no prom, maybe no in-person graduation, maybe no parties, on and on and on, with all the things that are so much fun for your seniors. And
Yes.
So that group has now gone on to college, and I'm happy to talk about college because that's a whole separate issue that we're facing right now. But so your incoming seniors now, it behooves us as educators to really try to have them have the opportunities that the last class didn't have. So we really need to make sure that we try to have the prom if it's safe.
Yeah.
We try to have graduation even if we need to socially distance. We try to give these seniors, because I will tell you that last year's graduating class truly felt an enormous gap in what they were thinking their senior year looked like and what it really looks like.
And also it has a big effect when you're going to college and you want to go to campus, you want to go to the student union, you want to go to football games, basketball, and all these other events. And I guess that takes us to, what advice do you have for those parents of children that are going to college for the first year under these conditions where unfortunately there's no parental control anymore? These college campuses become an incubator for possibly the virus again. And as an example, our kids are, one's in Kansas, and yet only one of his classes is a lab, and the rest are all done online. So is there a college life? Does it affect the socialization skills that college is supposed to prepare the kids for when they get to the real world?
Yeah. So a very interesting paradigm has emerged this year for any students who are going away to college. Many of the schools tried to open, many of the ones who opened closed, and they closed because the kids, first time away, freedom, right? So immediately they're at large parties and they're interacting with everyone, and of course then COVID, surfaced very rapidly, and then the schools closed down. Other schools never opened, they only opened virtually, and many, many, many parents around the country said, we're going to send our children anyway to, the house we rented, the dorm we rented, the apartment we rented, because we want our children to really have an opportunity to feel that away,
some semblance
right?
of college life.
Here's what no one thought about. For anyone who's gone to away college, there is a certain, as much as you want to be independent and as much as you tell your parents, I'm away, I'm done, I'll call you if I need you, and I will definitely call you if I need money in my checking account or my debit card, but otherwise they kind of want to be independent. But they still were socially interacting with lots of people their age. What's happened now, the kids have gone away to school, they've gone into their apartments, parents have set them up in their apartments or their dorms or whatever, the parents leave, and the kids immediately get locked down, and the social piece has immediately stopped.
Yeah.
So now there's an intense loneliness from the kids who literally are not only away from their family, but they don't even have anybody they can meet. So they can't make those, interactions that we all enjoyed in college, which is meeting the other kids, going to, whatever type of social
Sure,
event,
sure.
was
Very-
most
very
interesting
strong
for
point,
you.
yes.
So we're dealing right now, I get a lot of calls from parents, from college kids. What do I do? My child is so lonely.
And what do you tell them?
I tell them first and foremost, have your child put on his or her mask and send them out, whether it's to the grocery store,
Just walk
whether it's
around.
to a local area, and stop another kid their age when they see them and say, do you go to this school too? And they probably do. And introduce yourself and at least socially distance and talk. Hi, my name is, because the truth of the matter is, no one anticipated that particular paradigm. So bringing the kids back home right now, who did go away, is going to also be a challenge because it's going to be hard for them to go back again because their feelings about the school are a little different than what they would have been had they been able to have this gigantic social experience. So I'm working with a lot of
Oh, I'm
moms and
sure.
dads and,
Yeah.
and grandmas and grandpas about, let's just, let's be supportive of the children, of these high school freshmen. If they're sophomores or juniors, they've got their set of friends. And if they came back on campus, they have a way of, socially distancing but getting together. But when you're brand new and you're in a school
it's
you've
tough.
never been at, it's tough.
So, what advice do you have for parents of kids going back to school? How do you sum all this up and say, okay, what do we do with this paradigm? What do we do with this new norm, so to speak? That could change again. What do you tell people? I mean, you're an educator. It's got to be something. Imagine 20 years ago if this happened without technology. I mean, then it would have been a serious disaster. At least now we have Zoom, we have calls, we have the technology, computers. Back then we had nothing. So at least they have the ability to learn. So what advice do you give to the parents and the children, for that matter?
I'm going to slightly modify that because I think that this is going to be a work in progress in terms of
Right.
decisions that are made, and they may have to be changed.
It's fluid decisions.
Right. And we have to hope that our school districts, again, around the country, our private schools, everybody understands the fluidity of this, so that as this whole process again starts up, that changes can be made as we learn more about, what happens. But I think the advice I want to give to parents is a little bit different because it's a much more global part of advice, that we have to remember whether we're in COVID-19, whether we're in any kind of a pandemic, or whether we're in what we hope to resume to originally, which, eventually, which is, our old normal, where we could come up and hug someone or shake their hand or, whatever else that we were able to do in the past. And I think the important thing for every single person who's watching this to really think about, every single child is different, and every child is a blessing. And the most important thing that any adults can do for children, teachers, family, whoever it is, kids don't fit in little boxes. You can't make a little square box, plop the kid in, and expect that the kid's going to do what we want them to do. And I'm talking about kid, whether the kid is 5 years old or whether the kid is, 25 years old finishing graduate school. Our responsibility as adults is to understand that every child that walks past us is our future. And
That is for
it's
sure.
our responsibility as the adults to really say, each child has something special inside of them. When kids walk by, if you're standing in front of a school and you see 100 kids walking by, you may be looking at a president of the United States, You may be looking at the most important musician in the world. You may be looking at the poet laureate. You may be looking at the person who becomes a manager at Publix. You may be looking at the individual who is the bagger at Publix. You may be looking at someone who is a mechanic, and on and on and on. But if you take that child and always tell that child and celebrate those strengths, you know, there are kids who take things apart. For moms and dads who have had this happen, take things apart when they shouldn't be.
Yep.
Okay? They're in the room and there's some item that looks interesting to them, and so they found a way to take it apart. And of course, what do? You want to holler at the child, what did you do? Celebrate that. That child was inquisitive, and that child may be very interested in something that has to do, whether
Boy,
it's
is that true.
engineering or whatever, right?
Yes.
So I think if people walk away and just say, wow, it's my responsibility to honestly make sure that I support the child in whatever they want to try or do, as long as, of course, it's within, you know, societal guidelines, and that you really, really encourage children to be the best that they can be, because every single child's going to grow up to be an adult, God willing, and we want to really celebrate and help them do that in a positive way.
Great. Well, you understand now why Dr. Marks is so valuable to the city. We have 1,100 kids in one school, and now we have 400 something in the other, growing to 1,000 in the next 2 years. And you understand now why you have been such a contributor. But I want to tell you, you said something that gave me chills when you said every child is a blessing. And you know, that really hits home, because that is so true. You know, we tend to forget it when they're screaming, they're yelling, they're nagging. But the bottom line is, every one of those kids at some point in life will be our future in some manner, like you said. And I can only tell you, you're a blessing to our city. No, I mean that sincerely, because we've worked together for a lot of years in many capacities. But what you have done to ensure the safety and the educational ability of our kids to grow and become our future is invaluable to us. And I just can't tell you enough how much we thank you. And thank you today, because these are questions people ask. And I am not equipped for it. You're an educator. This has been your whole life. So I thank you from the commission, from all the residents of the island. And by the way, on a side note, Dr. Marks is also the president of the Point. So she and I have a lot to do in that. So I'm sure you know what it's like. But you know something, what you do, I'm pretty sure you're busier now than you ever were before. So again, thank you for listening. This has been great, and I can't thank you enough for everything you do.
My
thank
pleasure.
you, Dr. Marks.
Thank you.